They thought it would be the thrill of a lifetime, an underwater adventure with the ocean's most feared predators. But beneath the surface, something far more terrifying was waiting, and it wasn't the sharks. Australia's sun was blazing over a crystal blue sea when tourists Greg and Heather stepped onto a creaky old pier. They looked excited, holding hands and talking about the cage diving tour they had booked. Just then, a strange man named Dave approached them. With a half smile, he warned, "Last time we ran this trip, a shark took a college kid's crotch clean off." Greg and Heather laughed it off, thinking it was just some salty local trying to scare them. Their tour guide, Tucker, arrived soon after. Weather-beaten, cocky, and sun-scorched, he looked like a man who'd lived 100 lives. He greeted them and casually asked, "Does anyone know you're here?" When they said no, he grinned and said, "Good. Means if anything happens, no one's coming for you." Greg chuckled. Heather looked uneasy. They boarded Tucker's boat, and on the ride out to sea, he regaled them with stories of how he'd swum with sharks since childhood, surviving several near-death experiences. He even lifted his shirt to show a jagged scar from a supposed shark attack. Once they reached the dive site, Tucker began chumming the water, dumping bloody fish guts into the sea to attract the predators. Fins began circling the boat almost instantly. Heather, wide-eyed and shaking, panicked at the sight. Tucker offered to calm her down with a little meditation, but instead, he suddenly broke into a goofy rendition of the Baby Shark song. It was so ridiculous that Heather couldn't help but laugh. The tension eased. Encouraged by Greg, she finally agreed to enter the cage. Underwater, sharks swarmed all around them. Heather started to freak out, but Greg held her close. Together, they floated among the beasts, watching them glide by with primal grace. Back on the boat, Heather beamed with pride and adrenaline. Then, without warning, Tucker pulled a knife and stabbed Greg. He shoved him overboard as Heather screamed in horror, her voice echoing across the empty ocean. Miles away, a free-spirited American surfer named Zephyr caught the last rays of sun while riding the waves. Later, at a local market, she used a clever trick to steal a tub of ice cream, hiding it inside her Slurpee cup. A guy named Moses spotted her trick and blackmailed her into giving him a ride by threatening to snitch. Annoyed, she reluctantly agreed. During the drive, Moses talked nonstop, irritating Zephyr. But as soon as he mentioned his surfboards, things changed. Their mutual love of surfing brought down her walls. By the time they reached his place, they were laughing. They ended up hooking up in her van. As a prank, he threw her surf fin key out the window. The next morning, while Moses made breakfast, Zephyr quietly slipped away to catch the early waves. On the beach, she realized she needed a fin key. She looked around and asked the first nearby guy for help. He offered her a spare key from his truck. It was Tucker. He smiled warmly and told her it was brave to surf alone at sunrise. Then everything went black. A bag covered her face. She fought, but Tucker injected her with something. He duct-taped her mouth, shoved her into a surfboard case, and drove her to his boat. His dog barked and growled as he carried her on board and locked her away. Zephyr woke up in a dim, stinking room, handcuffed to a bed beside another terrified woman, Heather. A bucket in the corner served as their bathroom. Zephyr screamed for help, but only Tucker could hear her. He smiled as he chewed his breakfast. Zephyr noticed another woman's name scratched into the wall, implying this had happened before. She searched for anything to pick the lock, but found nothing. Heather, through tears, explained that no one would come for her. Zephyr admitted the same. Back in town, Moses noticed Zephyr's van being towed and rushed to the police, but without her full name, they refused to file a report. On the boat, Heather sobbed that she should have listened to her mom, who warned her not to travel during her gap year. Zephyr shared her own pain, how she grew up in foster care and had spent time in juvie. Trying to lighten the mood, she cracked a joke that made Heather laugh. Zephyr then noticed the underwire in Heather's bikini top. They managed to remove it, and Zephyr started trying to pick the handcuff lock. But just as she began, Tucker returned. He brought food, sat way too close to Zephyr, and creepily tasted her sweat. Then he left. Moments later, both girls started feeling dizzy. Tucker had drugged their water. They passed out. When Zephyr woke, she was tied to a chair on the deck. Cameras surrounded her. Heather was hanging from a crane above the shark-infested water. Tucker muttered about how God isn't in heaven, he's in the sea. He admired Zephyr's surfing, claiming she looked spiritual. Then, he slowly lowered Heather toward the water. Heather begged and cried. Sharks swarmed. Seconds later, she was gone. Zephyr screamed. Tucker called it the best show on earth. Later, back in the room, Zephyr scratched off some fresh paint from the wall and uncovered dozens of hidden names. That night, she removed the plastic handle from their pee bucket and fashioned a crude weapon. When Tucker entered to inject her, she stabbed him in the neck. He collapsed. She grabbed the keys, but Tucker stirred and lunged at her. She ran to the radio room and called for help. No response. Spotting a cruise ship nearby, she rushed to the deck and screamed. No one heard. Tucker appeared behind her. She threw his camera into the sea. He dove after it. She jumped in too. But the drugs hit her system again. She passed out in the water. Tucker dragged her back. Meanwhile, Moses had a breakthrough. He opened a beach camera app called Wave Watch and scanned footage from the night Zephyr vanished. A truck in the video bore the logo Tucker Experience. Moses followed the trail online, found an address, and sped to the pier. When he arrived, he heard muffled screams. He broke into the boat. He found Zephyr, chained, scared. Just as he tried to free her, Tucker attacked. They fought. Moses was overpowered, until Dave, the vendor, showed up. But Dave thought Moses was the attacker. Tucker stabbed him in the head with a hook. Then he silenced his barking dog. Tucker sailed the boat to a remote island, Hangman Skulls. Moses woke up cuffed beside Dave's corpse. Zephyr begged Tucker not to hurt him, but he ignored her and slowly lowered Moses toward the sharks. Moses froze. The sharks lost interest. Tucker, furious, stabbed him to draw blood. Then a helicopter searching for Zephyr flew by. Tucker had to abort. In the room, Zephyr saw Moses bleeding out. She popped her thumb out of its socket, trying to slide out of the cuffs. But it wasn't enough, so she started chewing. When Tucker came in with another dose of sedative, Zephyr was gone. All he found was her thumb on the bed. She had escaped. She locked him in and powered the boat. He escaped through the emergency hatch and cut the power, stopping the boat again. Zephyr saw a party on shore. She found a flare gun. Tucker came at her. She shot the flare, ran. They fought in the kitchen. She stabbed him with a frying pan and bolted. He chased her onto the deck. She found the harpoon and fired. The harpoon impaled Tucker and launched him into the sea. And from the depths, the shark returned. With a monstrous leap, it swallowed Tucker whole, a predator devoured by his own obsession. Zephyr was almost